The 12th path of the creation forces is Lamed, spiritual learning. Lamed relates with ox, goad, and sometimes staff or needle. This is the symbol of learning. As Lamed sits at the center of 22 pathways, it indicates learning at the level of the soul. It teaches that spiritual learning is at the heart of human experience. The idea of ox goad represents, repeats at the prodding from the higher source for the soul to learn. The staff relates to the learned sage, and the needle relates to the getting into, like the essence of consciousness, getting into the structure creation. Lamed simply tells us to strive to leave everything there is to learn and never. Lamed simply tells us to strive to learn everything there is to learn and never stop attaining new levels of wisdom. We discover the great meaning of life itself, the never ending expansion of our learned consciousness. The 13th path, Mem, Divine Mother, Shakti. The idea of Mem is related to water and describes the energy which has now become suddenly tangible, not physically tangible, but energy that can be felt. It described in other systems as chi, light force, or vital energy. This is raw energy that can be shaped but lacks solidification. By following this way, Mem has the virtue of consistency and describes a state of a stable intelligence. Mem and water is regarded as a divine mother or Shakti. The universe is the womb of creation, and out of this substance of creation, which we can come to be, our bodies are mostly water after all. Mem speaks towards balance, emotion, and the power of humility. The 14th path, Nun. Nun is the path of the fish who travels to the waters of men. The idea of something more tangible or solid within the fluidity. The meeting is symbolic of the soul who recognizes its infinite nature. It leaves behind the desires of life only to be replaced with the freedom to continually change form in all of the ways that it can. The process of death and rebirth. None speaks toward the relationship between the body, which is impermanent, and the soul, which is ethereal, which is eternal. When learned about flexibility and suppleness, going with the flow, adapting changes, and not resisting the new experiences that come our way. On the 15th path, Sekhmet describes the essence of support, such as that of a pillar to represent the pathway of upliftment. The idea is that support the soul uses to uphold its earthly vessel and vice versa. It is power unused, but Zion previously, however. This time, the power has a function. Its function standing still with great strength. The function is the key. This is the power which supports all the processes that lead to something more solid, beginning with beginning from form within the waters of potentiality, so it can have the strength and support to stay manifested. Segmet teaches circular thinking to act for the good of the whole. not seeking for the self, and simultaneously, in order to know spirit, we must know ourselves. On the 16th path, a yin, the letter yin relates to an I and has to do with the illumination of that which is hidden and the observation of prescription of image. These are thought of as mental or astral images, the idea of what still comes to be formed physically. It also describes a focus in that there are infinite number of things that we may focus on, but by choosing our focus carefully, we set our destinies into action. Again, also implore us to open our inner eye and see beyond the physical realm. It also teaches us to pay attention, for conscious attention may very well be of the higher skills we can develop as a species with mind. Pay, 17th path, communication. Pay translates to mouth, the pathway to communication. It is the power of transmission, the power of causing something to pass from one state to another. It is the power of speed. It teaches us to view our words as being as precious as gold, to treat them with respect and recognize the power that we have in our influence over ourselves and others. Tizadi, 18th path. Tizadi commonly relates with fish hook. This pathway describes the ability to align the lower personality with the higher soul. This is the aligning of the personality to bring it into resident with spirit. The nature of Tizadi is righteousness and humility, facing our own inner evil and restoring balance within order to bring the greater world around us back into harmony and nature. Quoth is the 19th path. Quoth relates with the back of the head. It is associated with self-awareness. Quoth represents the place in the mind where visual and mental images create the reality we conceive, perceive, and quite often believe. This letter also relates with the lower or subconscious programming within manifested life, such as in modern times we call the reptile brain. It describes the need to reprogram the lower aspects of ourselves, which are very animalistic in nature. These are survival instincts and are often quite violent or, at the very least, unrefined. This action happens in the cerebellum of the brain, basis of connection between the nervous system, brain, and body. Resh is the 20th path. Resh relates with the idea of the top of the head and sometimes face speaking towards the higher mind and the individual identity. Here there is power to interact with the world and structure and shape the world we want. This letter speaks toward identification and definition. In order to live in the world we need to have definition to work with. Definition and words subjectively define the world we live in, giving structure and meaning to our experience. This path speaks toward the ability to choose between greatness and degradation. Upon choosing greatness, embodying the true spirit of the creation is formed. The 21st path is Shin. Shin relates to the idea of a tooth, also represents fire. It speaks toward the human ability to change and be changed by everything life within us and our environment. Throughout all of time, both tooth and fire are symbols of a force which breaks down and transmute energy from one state to another. This is thus not that transformation, the breaking down of something in order to change its form, whether it is breaking down food to transform it into something our bodies can digest, or firing clay to solidify it into a pot. This speaks to balance between opposing states and extremes. The 22nd path, Tave. The final pathway is Tave, which relates with ideas such as whorl, cross, mark, or seal. The concept is it is completed or the work is done. The finishing point, the grand finale. This finished creation is the physical universe, as the process of creation has brought everything together into its final form. However, that manifests physically. Tade compounds all of the pathways together, bringing everything to a close, or the halfway point in a state from which life is born and strives to return back to its original form or its origin or point. This pathway teaches that from the very beginning, a journey to the end was already set up for us. We not only create the world we live in, but the heaven we are moving towards as well. If you create your own pathway to ascension and others follow it successfully, they will go to your heaven. Understand, all these heavens are one in the same, different vibrations or aspects of a greater harmonious, unified body of creation. The end and beginning are one, and Tave is the pathway of completion. The moment Tave is achieved, we begin again at a left, and the end become the beginning, and the beginning the end.